CIRF number 463. My name is Chris McCleary. We're going to be walking you through the Collective Influence Report and Forecast, so energy reports for the week of July 31st to August 6th. Welcome to August 2025. Calling this the dramatic mental shifts. Lots of components going into this title. The drama is coming from the expansive energies from not just the Leo. We have Sun and Mercury colliding together in Leo, and then we have the first quarter moon, so all that's very expansive and yang supportive. But then we have Mars that is on a grand trine. Mars will go into Libra and create a very mentally changing, transformative grand air trine. So there's your overview. And a huge shout out to 5 people tied for the comments. And I got to say that a lot of engagement this last week, but I do. And I find myself getting very inspired by all your comments. So don't hold back. These folks tied for first: Bobby Lee, Z9V, Zen Yeti, 3076, CJ Star, Monkey 73, Storm E. Garvin, 7190, and Geo's Gems 4016. Best comment, you all tied for first. Great comments, by the way, and very inspirational to me personally. Thank you. All right, let's get into the astrology. Big picture. We like to go big picture and then start going down day to day. So you are here in the eclipse cycle. Folks, we are getting towards the end of this Aries-ruled eclipse cycle. We have one more new moon after today, and during that cycle, we'll start the eclipse season. That's in September. The 2 main lunar phases in September will be the eclipses, and we'll talk about those soon then. But in this week, we're looking at a first quarter moon. That's what happens when we're in between a new moon in Leo and a full moon in Aquarius. So we're right there in the middle, but a lot going on, as evidenced by these going exact. And we'll talk all about those day by day. All right, so here's a energy kind of just big picture for the week. So what remains elevated is a very yang type of profile. In the background, in your face, is a Leo Yang first quarter moon and Venus square Saturn. So you have a square that adds sort of a pressure to it. You have a waxing gibbous moon all week that's expansive. And you have Mercury and Sun going cazimi in Leo right at the get-go. So it starts high yang, expansive, dramatic. And it doesn't seem to crest off. We're going to take that all the way to the full moon, in my opinion. But then underneath, we have this grand trine. It's not real exact. It's starting to get there. And by the end of the week, it's going to be hard charging and a complete air trine, grand air trine. And so with the transformation that's in there with Pluto and the change that's put in there by Uranus, all in air signs, we're just waiting on Mars to hit Libra, and then it's just the whole next CIRF report is going to be this massive grand air trine. But for now, actually, there's more. It's like a kite. It forms into a kite because we have the grand trine plus the mini grand trine on one leg. So I'll show you all that. But the point here is mental and air cognitive transformation that gets stronger as we go throughout this week. All right, starting Thursday, the 31st. There's a lot to see here. The most pronounced, I'd say, is that grand trine. You have Mars in late Virgo. Mars is obviously in an earth sign, but you have the other points, Uranus and Pluto, in air signs. And let's see. And you can see the beginnings. I don't want to put too much emphasis on this, but the kite is already here. So you've got the grand trine with Saturn and Neptune with sextiles over to Pluto and Uranus. So that rounds out the bottom of the kite. Okay. All right. And that will be the main focus of the next CIRF report. But it's something to keep in mind here. It's all connected together because you've got, down here, you got the azimuth. And so you have Uranus, Venus, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and the moon all at very early parts of their sign. So obviously they're going to be making a lot of different alignments, which now you can see that in the big picture. Another big one is the Sun and Mercury in a retrograde. So this goes exact at 9 degrees, 1 minute. They're going opposite directions of each other. Right? But this is the Mercury cazimi. Technically, they're not in the same inclination. So you determine if that's going to be a perfect cazimi or not. If not, and because they're passing at such different inclinations, that it is basically a Mercury combust. So you determine this. When is this happening? 6:41 p.m. Check in on yourself on Thursday. Check in on your mind. Is it really like brain fog or all over the place? Probably like almost a hyper mental, looking around and real, anxious maybe. Or is it like profound? This would be if Mercury is indeed a cazimi, then you would have like really strong mental insights at that time, like unusual ability to remember things and recall just in that around that span, around 6:41 Central Daylight Time PM on Thursday the 31st. So one or the other. Do let me know. What did you find? Did you find a sharp mental acuity, or did you find like brain fog and couldn't think during this time, 6:41 p.m. Central Time? But anyway, how do we delineate this? This is, by the way, getting close to a first quarter moon, which first quarter moon means very expansive, motivating, and a time to get off the couch and get started moving around and getting stuff done for your, especially your lunar goals. But as far as Mercury cazimi, it's going to be close to or in the heart of the sun. And this is what's defined as the cazimi. It can be a time of revisiting and refining your personal goals, creative projects, any self-promoting strategies. It's very motivating because it's in fire sign Leo, so it can be very impulsive. Ultimately, Mercury cazimi in Leo is a powerful time for self-reflection, creative breakthroughs, and owning your own unique voice. Imagine the spotlight. Here's your picture. So spotlight's on you now. Can't get away from it, and it's just a perception in the mind as far as being in Leo. The light's on. That can be very scary for a lot of us. Or it feels like imposter syndrome, or I don't want everybody staring at me. So it just depends on your personality profile. I hate that spotlight feel. But because it's so Leo, we might all feel a tad more confident, bold, self-assured, creative, expressive, or inspired, or reflective because of Mercury retrograde, introspective and self-aware. All right, and then Mars in that practical sign of Virgo, so that's action. So we are changing the way we think. There's a transformation in humanity that is taking place because of Pluto and Aquarius. There's changes in how we process mentally. But right now, it's all, as far as our action goes, it's channeled towards discriminate, making sure it makes sense. It's practical. It's self-care oriented. It's very tidy, if you will. But that will all change when Mars goes into Libra, hint, hint, at the end of our CIRF week. On Friday the 1st, we have the first quarter moon at 7:41 a.m. And that's down here in Scorpio. But the biggest headline is the Venus in Cancer square Saturn Neptune. The exact piece is Saturn, Mars square Saturn. So that's, empathy and interpersonal caring gets in the way of the search for the ideal self, or maybe puts emphasis on finding the highest self. Any time of that action will put you into a deficit, or it feels like you have given up on the people that you care about, or you feel resentful that you have to care for them. It's just you can't have both at the same time. And so back and forth you go with this pressure and tension. And even if you feel confident, let's say, about the Venus portion, and you go care for someone and nurture and strong empathy, there might be a pressure to leave and go do something for yourself or find yourself, or you might be like a resenting them for holding you back. Just be embedded in that energy. So, pick one, self or others, but you can also balance it out, like time share, both of those. Both are important. Finding your highest self and caring about others. How about that? But the picture here is a crab with a rose, and the crab is, ironically getting stabbed by the thorns in the rose. And that speaks to the energy that we just talked about. Yeah. So you're like caring and protecting others, but it'll cause, just because of the square, a sort of opposite feeling, or like a resentment or an anger for not being able to find your true self or highest self. All right, take a moment again to revisit this grand trine right now. It's very transformative. It's initially discretionary while Mars transits Virgo. So we have a big change energy while people are actively paying attention. That's the other Virgo. So Mars in Virgo pays attention. So we are paying attention to the transformation of humanity and the change of thought. Cool, eh? And then check out this Star of David. And it's not real tight, Star of David, because if it was real tight, you'd see a lot more sextiles around the outside. And we've seen hexagrams in the past with much tighter and many more sextiles around the outside. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And now it is with the moon. So the moon transits so fast that the fire part of this hexagram or Star of David is very transitory. But anyway, you have a fire trine, a grand fire trine, overlapped with a grand trine, a very transformative grand trine. So you get a temporary hexagram. So it's fairly, calling it loose because the orbs aren't super tight, but mainly transitory because it's very brief because of the speed of the moon. But what do we get? Well, we get the change grand trine, and then you get a moment of sheer like yang on top of that. So what do you get when you have fire and air? You have a bonfire. So it's like maybe an explosion, if you will, on Sunday the 3rd. I'm not calling for a actual explosion. This is metaphoric, but an explosion of yang. If any one of us were, kind of like tired or apathetic, that's sort of not what I'd expect for this week. If you're still apathetic and lack motivation, I would expect Sunday to be kind of like a chung chung, like to the heart of your energy. And then Monday the 4th, we're just back to the grand trine. Really, it's a kite. And so you got the mini grand trine, remember, with the Neptune and Saturn sextile Uranus in Gemini, and then trine down to Pluto, and then another sextile over. So this is the kite. It's part of the grand trine. But before we get to that grand air trine, let's talk about a grand cross. There's a lot of unique alignments happening this week. Tuesday the 5th, we have, with the help of the moon going into Capricorn, it makes a grand cross. Grand cross is made up of 4 squares. And again, they're all at that very early part of the azimuth of each of their zodiac signs. But the grand cross involves the Venus in Cancer, Mars in Libra, Moon in Capricorn, and Neptune, Saturn in Aries. It can create a feeling of being pulled in different directions, both internally and externally. That's why we have a picture of a person juggling a heart, an Aries sword, a clock, and a dream catcher for the Aries part. You've got protecting your relationships and care about interpersonal stuff, and then your Mars is nope, I need to be paying attention and doing what's right with Virgo and getting organized. Feeling torn. So the grand cross then obviously has got these contradictory messages from us energetically. So feeling torn between competing desires and responsibilities, yearning for balance and harmony. What is all this tension going to do? I think it's going to increase the pent-upness, or like the cabin fever sort of feeling that you're getting from all those other influences, the Venus square, the Mercury cazimi in Leo, the first quarter moon, and the waxing gibbous. And now we have the grand cross. All sort of speaks to energetically profound and may not be harmonious increase in energy, but an increase in energy nonetheless. And so that's why I'm proposing that it kind of feels like a stirring, can't quite settle down. I've got these this cabin fever sort of a feeling. Not a boredom. I don't expect it to be boredom, but I suppose it could be felt differently for all of us. All right, and here's where Mars goes into Libra and kickstart the grand air trine. It can be a time of breakthroughs and understanding for yourself and others. This leads to a very positive orientation. Remember, it is a kite towards that axis is justice on one hand. So Mars in Libra wants justice and balance and harmony, is at odds with, again, highest self. So you got that axis again. As justice begins to be distributed across humanity, then it inspires us to be our best good. And this is important because it's the axis of the kite. Many grand trines are full of sextiles. Sextiles are energies, opportunities, positive opportunities. So we're going to be feeling with this grand air trine energized and motivated really to think of new things, make the changes that are obviously unfolding, inspired to think out of the box and challenge conventional norms, and a lot more hopeful. This kite / grand air trine is a hope. Really deep within, a hope for the future that embraces progress, equality, innovation, a lot of justice. So anyway, that's when it begins, folks, Wednesday the 6th, but that's the last day of our CIRF report this time. Let's get into the I-Ching reading. So the I-Ching is meant to read, just like put all the energies together. What do we get? Well, according to the I-Ching reading, hexagram 26, line 1, it says humans often experience a profound sense of restrained power building within them, like a dam holding back rushing waters. Well, that's exactly what I'm seeing in the astrology. Every bit of it. It's increasing the feeling of restrained power, a feeling of being on the precipice of something significant. This influence brings a mixture of anticipation and frustration, as if you're gathering resources and energy for a future breakthrough, but must first master the art of containment. We don't need to just be wasting our energy just because you feel this containment thing. This is the cabin fever, or the feeling kind of out of place, or that you're missing something and you need to be going to do something, whatever you want to call that feeling. The changing first line adds a quality of foundational shift, suggesting that this period of accumulation and restraint is reshaping the very ground upon which future actions will stand. I'm getting to love these I-Ching readings. All right, let's button this up and get you the main suggestions, if I can. All right, here we go. All right, here's the influences. Sun in Leo, confident, proud, dramatic. First quarter moon, Mercury Cazimi in Leo. These are the main sky events. Venus square Saturn. We have Mars entering Libra, all in that order. Right? No, the first quarter moon is out of order. It would have been number 3 if we were going in time sequence, but they're all very big. First quarter moon being the biggest energetically. And we also have the grand trines, including the Star of David, which is very temporary, but the grand trine turns into a grand air trine. We have a grand cross, very temporary, and we have the mini grand trine. When you combine those together, we have the kite. All right. So here's our summary. And if you want this summary as your playbook, you want to see a copy of this, go to the Telegram, go to the show notes down below, and you get a link to the Telegram. It's free. And then you can download this picture for free. This week promises a powerful, energetic motivation, delivering a surge of confidence, vigor, and passion. Mercury Cazimi amplifies Leo bold traits in communication and thought processes, while Venus square Saturn creates tension between relationship realities versus idealistic expectations for self. Grand trines generate profound, change-oriented inspiration flowing through humanity's collective consciousness. Mars entering Libra transforms the grand trine into a complete grand air trine, catalyzing collective transformation. This celestial shift strengthens our motivation towards justice, peace, harmony, and balance, marking a pivotal moment for social evolution and conscious awakening. Whew, and if that wasn't a lot, wait till you hear about the solution. Solution is not demanding that you behave a certain way, but it's looking at some technologies to where we can have suggestions about how to behave. And we want to behave so that we make the most of the energies that we just talked about, which is that pent-up energy. So where do we channel the pent-up energy? Hexagram 18, this is where we begin. The I-Ching 18 says, become fearless agents of restoration. This sort of speaks to the general portion of Mars and where its placement is all week in tropical Virgo. Display an almost compulsive need to address problems, while others prefer to ignore or take personal responsibility for fixing things that may not even be your fault. Become willing to sacrifice your own comfort and popularity to do the unglamorous work of confronting dysfunction. It's correcting what's right. All right, here's the conversion chart. And we took the snapshot of the Mercury Cazimi in Leo. That was at 9 degrees, 1 minute of Leo. So that puts us into the Rave Mandala of 31. And we have Sidereal Cancer. All right. All right, going really quick with Rave Mandala. This is human design, gate 33. Big picture is about retreat. It's an active withdrawal and the transformation of a weak position into a strength. All right, and then so 33, the goal of this gate is to strategically withdraw in order to transform weakness into a strength. This gate is in the spleen center of human design. So if you want to go find whether or not your 33 is defined or not, you would look into the free human design chart and find that gate. If it's colored in, it's considered defined. All right, but we want line 2, surrender. Line 2 is where Mercury Cazimi happens. And so this unlocks very early on this line. This line says the recognition that surrender to superior forces can be an opportunity to expand one's own strengths and eventually triumph, embracing powerful forces in order to lay the foundation for future success. It is in surrendering, like conceptually, we always think of surrender as a weak position, but in this regard, it's strengthening our position somehow, which can take the place when you actually surrender. Like, for example, fighting the wrong fights. You ever notice that? Like, why am I even... It's pick your battles. You didn't do it right. And so you're entering into this battle that, like, what's the point of this? That's this line. All right, on the decrement side, it's Neptune. Unlike the reasoned and calculated surrender above, the deeper and personal surrender, the feeling that one's original position was a delusion, and the impression ability that makes might right. A public embrace of powerful forces and a private resentment of their power. What does all this mean? Well, the line itself, line 2, surrender, the themes are about strategic assessment, recognition of power dynamics, timing and patience, because there's sometimes when, like this in this decrement, where you accidentally surrendered when you shouldn't have. So we want future planning. We want to be yielding, but highly aware of making the right choice of keep fighting this fight or surrender. And it's not just you want to surrender anything. You want to surrender at the right time. The shadow aspects of this line is that when you surrender incorrectly or at the wrong time, you get resentment, self-deception about your true position, public compliance with private rebellion. There's an odds of, or there's those two are at odds with each other. The one big thing I like about this line, or one area where we could be habituating a correctly surrender, is for any like emotional stuff within self. You can do this with others, and I can explain that, but just work with me. Surrendering to an emotion, just how many times do we really have an emotion present and we're fighting against it? We don't want to be feeling this emotion. Well, the emotion's telling you something. It's an indicator of your experience, your existential, purpose even. It'll give you highlight about how you're reacting to the world. And so any type of emotion, if you're acting off of it, which normally happens when you're rejecting it, when you're acting on the emotion, you become emotional. In other words, your behaviors morph into the emotion. The emotion is the behavior now. Now it's the reaction. Well, you slam the door and the glass broke. Well, surrendering to the anger and recognizing that it's there means that I don't have to act upon the anger. Now, this is not repression. That's a whole nother topic. But anyway, a good emotional work this week, or when this happens, a great opportunity for you, an embedded pick your battles area is good emotional work. Good emotional work means eventually every single emotion you can surrender to, or you can deeply accept. I like the word accepting because it's not like surrender means you have to like give in. And I like the word surrender in this case, but other people don't, because it puts a power differential in there. In other words, surrender means, I'm down here. you're here. That's not what I mean by surrendering to emotions. I mean just relax. Just relax and accept. I think it's a radical type of acceptance and paradoxically, when you do that, you become less emotional. In other words, the actual emotion tends to vacate or diffuse. But more importantly, your emotion and behavior become differentiated, meaning that just because you feel a certain way doesn't mean that now you have to carry out that act, right? That's called diffusion. All right, just some quick techniques for this line as you consider surrendering. Practice recognizing opportunities within challenges. Study historical examples of strategic retreats. Focus on what you can learn during the periods of yielding. Build allies during times of retreat. These are just some ideas. Also, what's the silver lining to this? If you're ruled by the decrement, which is the Neptune, should be invoked when you need to recognize self-delusion or when you're experiencing inner conflict about your surrender. Neptune rules illusions, delusions, spirituality, and dissolution of boundaries. This perfectly aligns with the decrement aspect where one's original position might be revealed as a delusion, leading to resentment when you surrender. So, when you're on this decrement side, practice emotional honesty about your position. Distinguish between strategic surrender and emotional defeat. Recognize when you're deluding yourself about power dynamics, right? And align your public and private responses to and towards your highest values. All right, let's get going on the final part here. Yep, we have these strategies. We have the I-Ching 18, repairing the damage. We have retreat from the mandala, the rave mandala. We have sidereal Cancer and a first quarter moon. Let's summarize. Expect the yang energy that we talked about before to be so strong that it needs a behavioral outlet. Figure out what you really care about, that's your values, and repair it. That's bringing in the I-Ching. Repairing it, rebuild it, correct it, or just optimize it. This could be anything, a material item, a relationship, a process, a business, a marketing plan, etc., etc. But number 2, pick your battles carefully. Take some time to inventory the struggles that you're engaged with. Which ones are essential to continue? Justify your continued engagement. Why do you care about it so much? Conversely, which ones can be let go? Is this battle still in your best interest? Why or why not? Work towards your lunar goals all week since we have a first quarter moon and a waxing gibbous phase. As far as social goes, it's a little more socially beneficial for you as determined by all of these. All right, sorry about that. All right, that's about it. Socially, it's beneficial, but none of this is you have to get out there and be social. But I think, given the energies, I think it's a great place to channel the extra energy, especially if you see people in need. You can fulfill that Venus in Cancer aspect, and maybe that helps you increase your highest ideal self. Just as an example. Also, fixing things is a very Mars in tropical Virgo thing. So that's, all the way this entire week, except for the last day. That'll be very appropriate to follow that energy. So it may not be too hard, basically, to do those things. All right, everybody, let me know how I did. Let me know how effective this strategy is. We'll make changes as we need to. But other than that, have a fantastic week, and we'll see you again on Wednesday for a DreamBot update. Cheers.